Criminal, you may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Officer Laux, would you please state your full name for the record?
Richard E. Laux,
Officer, how are you employed?
with a police officer with the City of Tempe.
And how long have you been employed with the City of Tempe?
Approximately 4.5 years.
What is your current position there?
I am assigned to the South Patrol Division for the city.
I'm going to draw your attention to December of 2009. What was your position at that time?
I was the Beat 18 South Patrol officer.
Okay. Specifically on the date of December 27th, 2009, were you involved in going to the Smith residence in the city of Scottsdale?
Yes, I was.
All right. And who did you go with?
Officer Duarte and Detective Aguilera.
And what was the purpose of going to the home on that date?
To check for a child, to make sure the child was not at the residence.
Okay. And when you arrived there, what happened?
I proceeded to assist Officer Duarte with checking the residence for the child, and I also took pictures of text messages on a phone.
Okay. Now, what did you do specifically in the home to look for the child?
We checked anywhere that there could be a child in all the bedrooms, the balcony, the area around the home, anywhere the child could have gone to.
Okay, and you checked every square inch of the home?
As far as my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And did you do that, did you split it up and do it, or did you do it in a pair?
We did it together to make sure we didn't miss anywhere.
All right, and did you find any child there?
No.
Okay. Now, you also indicated that you took photos.
Yes.
Specifically, what did you take photos of?
I took photos of text messages back and forth between Miss Johnson and Miss Smith off a BlackBerry that was provided to me.
All right, so you literally got the BlackBerry
Yes.
and took pictures of the screen?
Correct.
Okay. And when you took pictures of the screen, what screens in particular did you take photos of?
One showing the times of the text messages, and then the actual text messages themselves, the conversation back and forth.
And what time did you go to the home that evening, if you recall?
I believe it was 16-11 hours. We started toward the residence.
Okay, and 16-11 hours, that's military time. What is that in?
4:11 p.m.
4:11 p.m. And how long were you at the residence, if you recall?
I don't recall exactly how long. I don't know what time we left.
Okay. Were you there past 6 o'clock?
Yes, we were there past 6 o'clock.
Past 6:30?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. I'm showing you what's marked as Exhibit 193. Officer, do you recognize those photographs?
Yes.
Are those the photographs that you took on December 27th, 2009 at the Smith residence?
Yes, they are.
Are those photographs all of the photographs that you took that evening?
As far as my knowledge, yes. These are all
Okay, and
the
did
ones
you
I took.
review them before coming into court here today?
Yes, I did.
The photographs that are there, do those photographs represent all of the text messages and all of the call logs that were provided to you that evening by Tammi Smith?
Yes.
While you were there, after you took those photos, did she ever inform you that there were more text messages or more calls that particular day?
No.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, I would move to admit Exhibit 193 at this time.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 193 is admitted.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Officer Laux.
Hello.
You did not write any type of report or supplement in this case, did you?
Correct.
So you reviewed someone else's reports for today's testimony?
Yes.
Whose reports would that be?
Officer Duarte's report.
Now, you stated that you went to the Smith's home at approximately 16:11, which would be 4:11 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And you stated that you didn't know how long you were there, correct?
Correct.
But then, as Ms. Ramuno questioned you, you said you were there past 6:30.
Correct.
Correct. Do you recall, officer, back on February 9th of this year, you and I did an interview, I believe it was by telephone?
I did an interview, I believe it was in person.
Okay, maybe it was in person. We did an interview together.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews was there. Okay, and I asked you some questions about this case. Do you recall it? You have to answer yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember me asking you, do you remember how long you were there?
I don't recall that specific question, no.
If I told you that I asked you, do you remember how long you were there? Would you have any reason to dispute that?
No.
Okay. And if I told you that your answer at the time was, no, I don't recall, would you have any reason to dispute that?
No.
Now, you were with Officer Duarte that night at the Smith's house.
Officer Duarte, yes.
Duarte, I'm sorry, Duarte?
Yes.
Okay. And Detective Aguilera was also there.
Correct.
Now, the Smiths permitted you to search their home, didn't they?
Yes.
You didn't have a search warrant?
No.
You didn't have an arrest warrant?
No.
They voluntarily let you come in and search?
Correct.
You basically knocked on the door and they let you in?
Yes.
And you took these photographs that are now admitted as Exhibit 193 of Ms. Smith's cell phone?
Correct.
Or rather, the text messages on her cell phone?
Correct.
And she allowed you to do that?
Yes.
And you also photographed the call log on the phone?
Correct.
And again, she allowed you to do that?
Yes.
Did you photograph all of them or just the ones from Elizabeth Johnson?
I believe it was only from Elizabeth Johnson that was provided to me.
I'm sorry?
I believe it was the only ones that were provided to me was Elizabeth Johnson on the screen.
Thank you. And you photographed all of the messages up until and including the moment that you were there?
Correct.
And the Smiths were cooperative with you?
Yes.
And they were cooperative with the other officers?
I only know about their cooperation with me.
Okay. And at least one of the purposes you were there was to see if Gabriel was there?
Correct.
And you determined that he was not there?
Correct.
You did say, I believe you said that no child was there?
But I meant Gabriel. Gabriel was not present.
Hannah Smith was there, right?
Correct. Their
And that's the
children
Smith's
there, yes.
child. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. And you did not speak to Tammi that night?
Correct.
And so is it a fair statement to say that the Smiths were completely cooperative with the police that night?
They were cooperative with me. I can't speak for the officers. I don't know their interaction with them.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect, Ms. Romano.
Very briefly, Officer Laux, you indicated that you reviewed Officer Duarte's report prior
Yes.
to coming in here. Is it pretty standard for one officer to write a report of what occurred?
Yes.
Even though other officers may be present?
Yes.
Okay, and in fact, your name is listed in that report as being present, correct?
Correct.
Right. In regard to the time that you remained at the home that evening, you indicated earlier that you reviewed those photos,
Yes.
correct? And is it fair to say that the timestamp on the top of the phone is after 6:30 p.m. on some of those photos?
May I review the pictures again?
Yes.
Correct, yes. This timestamps on some of them are after 6:30 p.m.
And when you indicated earlier that you were provided with the text messages, who provided the phone to you?
I don't recall who provided the actual phone to me.
Okay. Was it Miss Smith?
I don't recall.
You don't recall at
I
all?
don't recall who provided the phone to me directly.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Does the jury have any questions for Officer Laux before we let him go? Going once, going twice. May this witness be excused?
Yes, please.
Ms. Phillips, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may step down. Thank you. And the state may call its next witness.
Detective, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Detective Frank J. Aguilera.
Detective Aguilera, how are you employed?
As a police officer with the City of Tempe Police Department, as a detective in the Sex Crimes, Child Crimes Unit.
How long have you worked for the Tempe Police Department?
June will be 23 years total with Tempe Police.
Were you working, obviously, then for the Tempe Police Department in December of 2009?
Yes, I was.
And what capacity were you working for the police department back then?
I was assigned as a night robbery detective on the night robbery squad. I worked from 4 p.m. until 2 a.m. in the morning.
What does a night robbery squad detective do?
Our main focus is robberies, but because we do work at night and because we are detectives, we tend to pick up other assignments.
And on December 10th, 2009, in the early morning hours, did you respond to an address at 4605 South Priest Drive?
Yes, I did.
And is that in Tempe, Arizona?
Yes, it is.
Approximately what time did you respond to that address?
I was asked to respond at about 30 minutes after midnight on the 9th.
So
24:30, 00:30 hours.
And just to clarify, was it the early morning hours of the 9th or the 10th?
Early morning hours of the 9th. 10th.
And was that regarding an investigation that began on December 9th, 2009?
Yes.
Before you responded to that address, did you have any information as to why you were responding?
My supervisor advised me that I was going to be going out to that address. Patrol officers had been out with a young lady identified as, let me back up. I don't know that she was identified to me at that point, but I was advised that this young lady had claimed that her baby was missing, and then they determined that the baby was not with the father, as the mother had claimed, and the mother was refusing to advise the officers where the baby was at. And this had been going on for a few hours that day on the 9th.
And prior to your being dispatched to that address on Priest Drive in the early morning hours on the 10th, were you involved in that missing child investigation at all?
No, I was not.
And so you indicated you went to that address. At some point in time, was the mother who was reporting her child was missing, was she identified to you at some point?
Yes, Sergeant Kepler identified her. I met with Sergeant Kepler out in front of the address there, along with Sergeant Carlton, and I was given an assignment at that point.
And when you met with Sergeant Carlson and Sergeant Kepler, did you have a conversation with them about the investigation that had occurred on the 9th?
Yes.
And then did you proceed to a unit number 153?
Yes.
Do you know whose residence that was?
I learned that that was the residence of Elizabeth Johnson.
And is Elizabeth Johnson the mother that we've been talking about?
Yes.
And when you went to the residence of Elizabeth Johnson, did you go alone or did someone go with you?
No, I was accompanied by Sergeant Carlton.
When you went to Elizabeth Johnson's residence, did you and Sergeant Carlton contact Elizabeth?
Yes, we made the decision to make contact with her.
Did one of you question her?
Sergeant Carlton sat down at the dining room table with her, and I stood next to them.
What did Elizabeth tell Sergeant Carlton at that point?
Sergeant Carlton advised Elizabeth Johnson that we were there to try to determine where baby Gabriel was. She advised Sergeant Carlton that the baby had been adopted, and then retracted that statement saying, well, he hasn't been adopted yet.
Did she identify to you who were the people who were supposed to have been adopted or were adopting?
Yes, she did.
Who did she identify?
She identified the female as Tammi Smith and her husband.
And did she describe to you and Sergeant Carlton how she met Tammi?
Yes, she talked about meeting Tammi during a flight from our layover in Boston, where she had been visiting a relative there. and they talked about the adoption and adopting baby Gabriel.
Did she explain to you and Sergeant Carlton what she was doing at Logan's work that day? Or the day before.
Yes, she was trying to get him to sign adoption papers.
And did she explain how Logan reacted to her trying to get him to sign adoption papers?
I don't know. I don't recall if she did specifically during that conversation, but I do know that he was upset and refused to sign.
Do you recall her telling Sergeant Carlton that he began yelling and then she was yelling?
Yes.
During the time that Sergeant Carlton was talking to Elizabeth Johnson, did you obtain information on how to reach Tammi Smith?
Yes, she advised me that it was the phone number to Tammi Smith was in her phone on the caller ID, and that was the house phone. So I picked up that house phone and started going through it with her permission.
And at that time, did you find information to help you reach Tammi Smith?
I found information, but that information got me to a business, and I had to do some more digging on Tammi Smith to get the phone number that I eventually called.
And what did you do in order to finally get that phone number?
Contacted records and did some database checks.
At the time that you were contacting records and doing database checks, was Sergeant Carlton still talking to Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
Were you present and able to hear that entire conversation while you were doing your records checks?
Not the entire conversation.
At some point, were you able to reach Tammi Smith?
Yes.
When you were able to reach Tammi Smith, where were you located in relation to where Elizabeth Johnson was?
I actually excused myself from that room and walked outside.
And when you contacted Tammi Smith, what happened in that conversation?
I remember calling, leaving a message, and at one point she returned the call, I believe. It was approximately 1:30 or so in the morning. I apologized for calling so late, explained the situation as to the fact that we were trying to locate baby Gabriel, and I had been advised that Tammi had baby Gabriel with Elizabeth Johnson's permission, and I needed to verify this.
And did you ask Tammi Smith if you could come out and verify that she had Gabriel?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did you actually go out to verify that Tammi Smith had Gabriel?
Shortly after my conversation, yes.
And you indicated your conversation with Tammi was around 1:30 in the morning, and you had arrived at Elizabeth Johnson's around 12:30 in the morning?
Yes.
When you went out to the Smith residence, were you accompanied by anybody?
Fellow night squad detective, Detective Kelly.
And about how long did it take you to get from Elizabeth Johnson's place to Tammi Smith's place?
It was a drive, and in the dark, it's even more of a drive. If I had to think hard about it, maybe at least 20 minutes, if not longer.
And at some point in time, did you arrive there?
Yes.
And did you talk to Tammi Smith about baby Gabriel?
Both her and her husband.
And did you identify her husband at that time?
Jack Smith.
And when you arrived there, were you able to locate Gabriel?
Yes.
Where was Gabriel when you found him?
He was upstairs in what I believe was the master bedroom in a bassinet.
Was he awake, sleeping?
He was asleep.
Was he healthy?
When I saw him, he used a flashlight, not directly in his eyes, pulled the cover back, looked at him. He looked to be healthy. He was asleep. And we also had a picture with us.
While you were there, did you have any conversation with Tammi Smith about the reason that you were looking for Gabriel?
While I was there, yes, and also over the phone prior to, with my initial contact with her.
And in that conversation, did you make Tammi Smith aware of the fact that you were looking for Gabriel because Elizabeth had claimed that Logan had Gabriel?
Yes.
Did Tammi Smith react at all to that information?
I don't recall that she did. I mean, she never denied that she didn't have the baby, but I don't recall that she reacted to that information.
Did she indicate to you where she got Gabriel on that day?
Yes. She also supplied me with a copy of a power of attorney for guardianship, explaining that she was looking to adopt baby Gabriel, and there was an agreement between her and Elizabeth Johnson, and this power of attorney for guardianship was executed on the 9th.
And so you arrived there and advised Tammi Smith that Elizabeth Johnson had accused Logan of having the baby, and Tammi Smith provided you with this guardianship document from Elizabeth Johnson.
Yes.
And did she also advise you that Elizabeth Johnson actually gave them baby Gabriel?
Yes.
Did she indicate to you that it was Tammi Smith and Jack Smith's intention to adopt baby Gabriel?
Yes.
And at the time that you met with the Smiths on that day, did you record that conversation?
No.
And what was your entire purpose for being at the Smiths' residence that night?
To verify that they had baby Gabriel and that baby Gabriel was safe.
Were you investigating the Smiths for any reason at that point?
No.
Did you feel you had any reason to investigate the Smiths for anything at that point?
No.
Had anybody provided you any information up to that point that would lead you to believe they were suspects in any wrongdoing?
No.
At some point in time, did you then notify Sergeant Carlton that baby Gabriel was okay?
Both Sergeant Carlton and Sergeant Kepler, the original patrol sergeant, out on the scene.
After that day, after you verified that Gabriel was okay, did you have any other part of that particular investigation between the 9th and the 10th?
No.
Did you have any contact with Logan McQueary that you recall?
No.
Were you assigned to submit any charges or be the case agent per se in regard to that investigation?
No.
And did you submit any charges on that case?
No.
Did your supervisor request for you to submit any charges on that case?
Not my supervisor, no.
And did you talk to any witnesses in regard to the allegations that Logan kidnapped the child?
No.
Other than Elizabeth Johnson, Tammi Smith, and Jack Smith, did you talk to anybody in regard to that incident?
Just Sergeant Kepler and Sergeant Carlton.
On December 27th, 2009, did you return to the Smith residence?
Yes.
Between December 10th and December 27th, did you have any part in an investigation regarding Tammi Smith or Elizabeth Johnson?
No.
On December 27th, 2009, what was the reason you responded to the Smiths' home?
I was called by a Officer Duarte, and Officer Duarte called me at my residence. I was actually off on that Sunday, and he asked me if I knew where the Smiths lived, and I said yes. He asked me if I could explain to him how to get to their residence because they could not locate it, and Scottsdale police could not locate it in their database. I explained to him that it was very difficult to find and that I had been out there during the course of the night. Given the directions that Miss Smith had given me prior, on the 10th, I advised Officer Duarte that I would meet him up in the north section of the 101, and I would ride with them into the Smith's residence and guide them the way in.
And did you in fact meet them?
Yes.
And when you said you rode with them, did you ride in the same car, a different car?
I rode in the cage of the police car.
Okay, so the back where suspects sit?
Yes.
And at some point you arrived at the Smith's residence?
Yes.
What time was that?
Having checked radio information that's available via our dispatch, it was 17:51 hours.
Let me ask you that. You indicate you've checked radio about the dispatch. How does that work? How does radio keep track of when officers are dispatched to a location?
Well, radio would dispatch, and there's any communications that is going through our radio communications group, dispatch, is recorded, documented with the computers. All an officer has to do is push a button, a arrive button, and that sends a signal to dispatch stating that they arrived. I couldn't tell you what Officer Duarte did, if he communicated over the radio or if he pushed the button on his computer, but it shows that we arrived at 17:51 hours.
And what is that non-military time?
5:51.
And if you arrived there at 5:51 p.m., what was the reason you and Officer Duarte and Officer Laux were responding to that location?
Officer Duarte had informed me during the course of the ride and during the phone call at my residence that they needed to verify that baby Gabriel was not at the Smith's residence because there was information that she is Elizabeth Johnson, was in San Antonio. One of our patrol supervisors had communication on a phone with her, and it was determined that she was possibly in San Antonio.
And you arrived at the Smith residence. Did they know you were coming before you got there?
I can't testify to that because I didn't make a call to them.
When you got there, who was at the Smith residence?
I recall Tammi Smith and Jack Smith.
Was their daughter Hannah present?
I remember the little girl on my prior visit. I could not tell you if she was there on that visit.
Did you have any communication personally with Tammi or Jack Smith while you were there?
I'm sure I did in introducing Officer Duarte and Officer Laux to them, and the officers to the Smiths. I'm sure at some point there was some conversation, but I couldn't recall what it was because I didn't record that myself.
You didn't record any contact with them that day?
I didn't record any contact.
And was it your responsibility to sit down and interview either of the Smiths while you were there?
No, my responsibility that day was to get the officers out there to complete their assignment.
At some point in time, was there a search of the Smiths' residence to see if Gabriel was there?
Yes.
Did you participate in that search?
No.
Who participated in the search?
Either Officer Laux or Officer Duarte or both of them.
And at some point in time, did any of the officers present sit down and talk to Tammi Smith and Jack Smith about what was going on and where Gabriel might be?
Yes, I was present while Officer Duarte had conversation with Tammi and Jack, and we were sitting in the foyer area of the residence. When I say sitting, the two officers and myself were standing. Tammi, I believe, was seated on the staircase, and Jack, I believe, was standing as well on the staircase there.
And at some point in time, did Tammi provide either you, Officer Duarte, or Officer Laux with information that she received some phone calls or text communication from Elizabeth Johnson?
I believe it was text communications that we observed later.
And did she show those to the officers who were present?
Yes.
And at some point in time, did she try and actually provide those to you by texting them to you or emailing them to you?
Yes, I advised her to go ahead and email them to my email address, and then I would in turn give them to Officer Duarte for his report.
And at some point in time, did she actually provide those to you then by email?
Yes.
And you found them on your email address?
I was able to verify that they were coming on my phone, which has my email attached to it.
So you had your phone with you and you were able to look at your phone email while you were present at the Smiths on December 27, 2009?
Yes.
At any point in time while you were present there on December 27, 2009, or even when you were present on December 10, 2009, did you ever have any conversation with Tammi Smith where you told her you didn't think what Logan and his dad were doing was right?
I don't recall a conversation like that.
Does that sound like a conversation you would have had with Tammi Smith?
I didn't really have a purpose for what. I wasn't involved in that actual investigation, and I didn't know exactly what was going on, so why I would have a conversation of that nature, I don't know.
Did you ever tell Tammi Smith that you could help Elizabeth Johnson?
I don't recall that statement.
While you were present there at the Smith's house on December 27, 2009, did you ever suggest to Tammi Smith to contact Logan and try and get him to sign adoption papers so that Elizabeth Johnson would come back with baby Gabriel?
No.
Did you have any conversation at all relative to that?
Not for him, no.
Did you have any communication with Tammi Smith about coming up with any plan to try and get Elizabeth to return?
I don't recall that, no.
While you were present at the Smiths, did you receive any information from Tammi Smith that while you were there at her home, she was receiving communication from Elizabeth Johnson?
The text messages that I received were the ones that she had sent to me, and they're the ones that are attached to Officer Duarte's report. And given the times of those, I don't recall that that's a true statement. That I received any while we were there from her.
While you were there, while you were present in Tammi Smith's home, did she say to you or Officer Duarte when you were present or Officer Laux when you were present, I just got a text message from Elizabeth Johnson. I'm going to text her right back. Officers, would you like to join me in this conversation or anything to that effect?
Was the objection?
Well, it's leading.
It is generally leading. I'll allow, for purposes of this question, I'll allow.
I believe he also answered the question.
No, he may have, but the jury can determine that. So I'll allow the question. Did you get what the question was? You need it repeated.
Yes.
Maybe in shorter form.
No to your question.
So there was no conversation between you and Tammi Smith about texts she was receiving from Elizabeth while you were present?
True.
Was there any conversation between you and Tammi Smith about texts she was sending to Logan while you were present there in her home?
No.
Detective Aguilera, I'm approaching you with what's been marked as exhibit number 170, and I'm also approaching you with a pair of scissors because this has not yet been opened. Would you go ahead and open that and see if you recognize what's in that package? Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are they?
The envelope is a impounding by Officer Duarte, and it's the report number. It says 7 pages of printed out text messages, and the 7 pages are text messages that were sent to my work phone number, and the ones that I then in turn emailed to Officer Duarte.
And those printouts that you have, do they contain not only the text message that was sent, but then they're forwarded to your email, so they contain the information about the email contacts as well?
Yes, and the way it would work is she actually texted them to my work phone number on my phone, and then I in turn emailed them to Officer Duarte.
If you could look at those pages that are in front of you and tell us what is the last time date for the last text. And I'm not talking about the time of the email, but the time that the text occurred. You can tell us what time the last text is.
The last text is to a 210 area code, and that one has a time of 5:43 p.m.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you convert that to military time for us as well?
1743.
And Detective Aguilera, when you received these texts via email from Tammi Smith, did she tell you who they came from?
Yeah, it would have been Elizabeth Johnson.
So Tammi Smith told you they came from Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
I want you to take a look at those again. And rather than the last time on the text messages, could you tell us the last time on the email? What I'm referring to is what time is the last time she emailed you text messages?
The last one that was sent to me was at 6:49 p.m., which in military time would be 1849.
Did you receive any further emails about text messages after that one?
No.
Now, Detective, you talked about the radio call that indicated what time Officer Duarte indicated that you arrived at the Smith residence. Did you also check the radio time for, well, let me ask you, when you leave a residence or you leave a call, what do you call that when you contact dispatch? How do you refer to that?
When we leave a call,
Right. Is there an official
we
term?
leave.
Okay. Do the call records indicate when you left?
The call records don't indicate when we left. What they indicate is when Officer Duarte cleared the call. Now, that could mean after we left at some point, he went ahead and cleared the call, saying that he was done with that call. Could have been when he dropped me off to get into my own private car, or it could have been when he got back to the station.
So he would have cleared the call at some point in time, either when he was leaving or when he got back to the station or in between that time period?
Yes. Typically, when you leave a residence, you advise that you're leaving the residence.
What's the reason for that? Why would you advise dispatch that you're leaving a location?
Well, myself, the reason I advise that I'm leaving a residence is I want dispatch to know that I am code 4, so to speak, that I'm safe. I'm now not in that residence. If something happened to me after I had left that residence and they couldn't locate me, if I didn't advise that I hadn't left that residence, that's the first place they're going to look. Now they know not to look at that residence or wherever it was that I was at, and they can start looking elsewhere. He didn't, for some reason, advise on the radio or through his computer that we had left the residence. The only thing that shows after the arrival time is that he cleared the call at 2018 hours.
And you checked those call records yourself?
Yes, I did.
And I'm sorry, what time was it that he cleared the call?
2018 hours.
And what time is that converted to non-military time?
8:18 p.m.
8:18 p.m. Now, if Tammi Smith sent a text message to Elizabeth Johnson at 19:27 and 18 seconds that the police had just left, would that be inaccurate?
No, because I believed that we were at that residence for at least an hour and a half, if not longer, and that would put it within that time frame.
Thank you, Detective. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Ms. Phillips.
Sorry, 1 second. Good afternoon, Detective Aguilera. You, as you've testified, went to the Smith's house on December the 27th, 2009, correct?
Yes,
And you did not write your own report or supplement in this case, correct?
correct.
And you reviewed someone else's report for today's testimony?
Yes,
Whose report, sir?
Officer Duarte.
Now, you've stated you actually didn't go there to investigate that night. You actually went there that night to help Officers Laux and Duarte find the home.
True.
And is that because it was way out in North Scottsdale and there were no street lights and it was dark?
Yes,
And that was your only purpose in going there that night, wasn't it?
yes,
Now, prior to December 27th, you testified that you had contact with the Smiths on December the 10th, right?
yes,
And you did not write a report on December the 10th either, did you?
yes, I did. I wrote a supplement.
And you went on December the 10th for the purpose on that day to look for Gabriel on December the 10th.
Can I clarify that?
Sure.
I was detailed with going to that location, 4605 South Priest, to sit on the residence to possibly observe Elizabeth Johnson leaving the residence to go pick up her child, if that might be the case. I suggested that I go and speak with Miss Johnson because the fact is that's what I do for a living. I'm a negotiator and I speak to people.
I understand that you went to Miss Johnson's residence on the 10th, but I'm asking you about going to the Smiths on the 10th.
Oh, it was to look for. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. you just explained that you had, on that day first, you went to the Johnson residence.
Yes.
Okay. But then you got some information that led you to the Smith's home that day.
Yes.
Okay. And it was your purpose to look for Gabriel to see if he was at the Smith home.
Yes.
And he was at the Smith home.
Yes.
And he was sleeping.
Yes.
Okay. And he was safe.
Yes.
Okay. And he was healthy.
Appeared to be so, yes.
Okay. That night, on December the 10th, Elizabeth had reported Gabriel missing.
Yes.
And that's why you were first at her house.
Yes.
She had reported that Logan had kidnapped the baby.
Yes.
And then she told you that the Smiths had adopted him. First, she told you that.
Yes.
And then she kind of backpedaled and said, no, they didn't adopt him, but they have temporary guardianship.
True.
And that's when you called the Smiths to confirm that information.
Yes.
Now, when you went to the house and discovered Gabriel safe, asleep there, you looked at that temporary guardianship document, correct?
Yes.
You had Ms. Smith show you the document.
She actually made me a copy of it, yes.
Okay. And, Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked exhibit number 148. Please take a look at that. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
Is that the temporary guardianship document that Tammy showed you that night?
Yes.
And it was your testimony, sir, that at that point in the investigation, as you put it, there was nothing suspicious about anything that the Smiths had done at that point.
True.
Move to admit exhibit 148, Your Honor.
No objection.
Exhibit 148 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect.
Just one question. Detective Aguilera, you said Tammi Smith made you a copy of that document?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
She provided me with a copy of it.
Did she have a copy with her to give to you? Or did she have to print it off? How did she do
She
that?
had a printer at her residence.
She printed it off her computer?
No, it was a printer, not on the computer, just a printer that you would make a copy of.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we let Detective Aguilera step down, does the jury have any questions for him? Doesn't appear that way. May this witness be excused, Ms. Andrews?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Phillips? You may step down. Thank you. And the state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Officer Duarte.
Okay, let's go ahead and get Officer Duarte. And Ms. Andrews, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Duarte, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Officer Gregory Duarte.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer with the city of Tempe
How long have you worked for the city of Tempe as a police officer?
for just over 8 years.
And what do you currently do for them?
I'm in the patrol division, so I am a uniformed officer that answer calls for service.
And I see you're in uniform right now. Are you on duty right now?
Yes, I am.
What were you doing? What was the capacity you worked in December of 2009?
I was working patrol that day.
And what area did you work patrol at that time?
South Tempe,
And what were your hours in December of 2009?
if I recall correctly, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 2000 or 1000 to 2000.
On December 27, 2009, were you asked to participate in an investigation regarding Gabriel Johnson?
Yes.
Prior to that time, had you been involved in an investigation regarding Gabriel Johnson?
No.
What were you specifically asked to do on December 27, 2009?
I was dispatched to go to an address to see if Gabriel was at this address or Elizabeth were at this address, and if they weren't, to see if I could find out where they were.
Were you provided with a reason you were looking for them at that address?
No.
What address were you given to go to see if they were there?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Was it an address in Scottsdale?
Yes.
And do you know why you would have been asked to go out to Scottsdale rather than the Scottsdale Police Department?
We had officers that were already investigating something in Tempe, so my belief is that to keep it within the department, they just requested me to go.
Prior to your going to the address in Scottsdale, do you know whose residence that was?
Not till I was dispatched.
And at some point in time, were you provided with information about whose residence it was?
Yes.
And whose residence was that?
Jack and Tammi Smith.
Were you provided with any other information about Jack and Tammi Smith prior to arriving?
The week before, I had overheard Detective Aguilera mention their name and Gabriel's name. So on my way out to their residence, I called him and arranged to meet with him, and then he accompanied me to their residence.
And so did you in fact meet with Detective Aguilera and then go together to the residence?
Yes.
When you went to the residence, did you at some point in time have contact with Tammi and Jack Smith?
Yes.
When you were present at that residence, did you record your contact while you were there?
Yes.
Did you actually sit down and have an official interview with Tammi Smith?
No.
Did you sit down and have an official interview with Jack Smith?
No.
What were the circumstances surrounding your contact with the Smiths while you were present there?
I was sent to check to see if Gabriel was there or Elizabeth were there. And my contact, I didn't sit while we were there. We were in the foyer of the house, and I recall Tammi sitting on the stairs and Jack standing next to her. And myself, Officer Laux, and Detective Aguilera were all there with those two.
And when you arrived, did you talk to the Smiths about why you were there and what you were looking for while you were there?
Yes.
Were they cooperative?
Yes.
Did you record your contact with the Smiths on that day?
Yes.
You explained to us how it was that you were recording the contact. Did you put out the recorder and say, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to record this, or where was your recorder?
Working in patrol, I wear another uniform, which is an outer vest, and it has a pocket on the outside of the vest specifically for the digital recorder. When I arrived, I turned the recorder on and placed it in the pocket, and then we approached the residence.
Is that something you normally do when you're conducting an investigation?
Yes.
Did you advise the Smiths that you were recording that contact?
No.
Now, we've already established that you didn't sit down and have an official interview with them. What did you do with the recorder while you were at the home? Did it remain in your pocket?
Yes.
And were there times that you were in contact with the Smiths and then in another part of the house out of contact with the Smiths and then back in contact with the Smiths?
Yes.
Would your recording of your contact with the Smiths that day include other conversations that were happening, perhaps with you and Detective Aguilera or Officer Laux?
Yes.
Would it record any conversations that maybe the Smiths might have been having with Hannah or between each other?
Yes.
While you were present, you didn't sit down, but did you talk to the Smiths about their contact generally with Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
And generally, what did Tammi Smith tell you about her contact with Elizabeth Johnson?
That they were trying to help Elizabeth, that they had custody of Gabriel, and that they were contacted after a court hearing to meet up with Elizabeth and turn Gabriel back over to them, and that's what they did.
And did they indicate to you that it was their intention to adopt Gabriel?
Yes.
During the time you had conversations with Tammi Smith, did she talk about Logan?
Probably a little bit, yes.
Did she provide to you a printout of Logan's criminal history?
Yes.
Did she tell you why she was providing that to you?
I don't recall.
Do you recall her telling you that she provided that to you so you knew what you were dealing with?
Vaguely.
Did she provide you a criminal history for Elizabeth Johnson?
No.
While you were present at the Smiths' home, did you look to see if Gabriel and Elizabeth were there?
Yes.
Did you search the entire residence?
Yes.
Did you do so by yourself or with someone else?
With Officer Laux and Jack Smith.
And while you were present, did you ever find Elizabeth Johnson or Gabriel Johnson?
No.
During the time you were present there, did you have conversation with Tammi Smith about communication she had had with Elizabeth Johnson prior to your arriving?
Yes.
Did she provide you with information that she had received text messages from Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
Did she provide those text messages to you or the other officers who were present?
Yes.
Did she tell you the last time she had contact with Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
And did you document that time in your report?
Yes.
In a criminal case, do you ordinarily write a report?
Certain calls for service, yes.
In this case, did you write a report about your contact with the Smiths on December 27, 2009?
Yes, I wrote a supplement to an original report.
When you wrote your report, did you write it while you were at the Smiths' residence or sometime later?
Sometime later.
And in that report, did you document the time that Tammi Smith told you was her last contact with Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
And was that time 13:30 hours?
Yes.
And what time is that in non-military time?
1:30 p.m.
And so that's the last time Tammi Smith told you she had contact with Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
And you wrote your report after that?
Yes.
So had she provided you any further information about additional contact with Elizabeth Johnson, you would have written something different in your report?
Yes.
While you were present, did you see the text messages from Elizabeth Johnson to Tammi Smith?
I vaguely recall looking at her phone on the text messages on her phone.
And at some point in time, did Detective Aguilera provide you email print-offs of those text messages?
He emailed me the text messages and I printed them off.
And then did you impound them into evidence?
Yes.
During the time that you were present at the Smiths residence, well, let me ask you this. At some point in time, you cleared the call. So
Yes.
you left the residence at some point in time and you cleared the call. Do you recall when you cleared the call, when you left, or when you arrived somewhere else?
According to our dispatch records, it was 2018 hours, which is 8:18 p.m.
Right. And do you
Yes, 8:18 p.m.
And do you recall if that was when you left the residence or when you got to the station or when you dropped off Detective Aguilera?
I don't recall.
Do you recall how long it took you to get from the residence back to the station?
No, it would have been approximately half an hour at least.
And so the records indicate that the call was cleared at 2018. If Tammi Smith texted Elizabeth Johnson that the police had just left at 19:27 and 18 seconds, would you agree with that?
Yes.
Does that sound about right?
Yes.
While you were present in the Smith home with Detective Aguilera and Officer Laux, do you recall Tammi Smith or Jack Smith for that matter telling you that Elizabeth Johnson was texting Tammi Smith while you were present?
No.
Do you recall Tammi Smith telling you that she texted Elizabeth Johnson back while you were present at the residence?
No.
Did you have any conversation with Tammi Smith about getting Logan involved to try and get Elizabeth to bring back the baby?
I don't recall that, no.
Do you recall having any conversation with Tammi Smith suggesting she contact Logan and suggest he sign adoption papers so that Elizabeth Johnson would come back with the baby?
I don't recall that.
Did Tammi Smith tell you that she had texted Logan McQueary while you were present in her home?
No.
Did Tammi Smith tell you that Logan McQueary responded to that text while you were present in her home?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Detective, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 170. Would you please go ahead and open that and tell us if you recognize that?
printouts of the text messages that were forwarded to me by Detective Aguilera.
So those are the text messages you printed out and impounded?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibit number 170.
Any objection?
May I see 170, please?
Why don't you come on up to take a look at it? That's where you want to hand those to.
Thanks.
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
Exhibit 170 is admitted. Ms. Hills, go ahead and bring it back up, and you want to give it to me, and I can hand it over so he doesn't have to get up again.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Ms. Andrews, you may continue. Exhibit 170, I don't know if I said it, Exhibit 170 is admitted.
Officer Duarte, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 50. And there's some scissors right there in front of you. This hasn't been opened yet. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open it. And tell us if you recognize it.
It's a CD of my audio recording.
And does the outside package that I provided you, does that indicate that you impounded that item?
Yes.
And that's actually the CD that you made of the recording?
Yes, it's my handwriting on it.
And to clarify, what recording is that?
Oh, my recording with Jack and Tammi Smith at their residence.
And we already talked about this a little bit, but that's your recording as you were walking around the residence the whole
Yes.
time you were there?
Yes.
So it doesn't just have Jack and Tammi Smith talking on it?
Correct. It has me and Officer Laux and Detective Aguilera.
Your Honor, at this time I move for the admission of exhibit number 50.
Any objection?
I object, Your Honor. I don't know what's on that CD.
You haven't heard that CD?
Well, I haven't heard that CD.
Well, we're not going to admit it until you have a chance to listen to it, but you need to do that, obviously, as soon as possible.
The envelope was sealed, Your Honor. There was no way to do it before it was opened.
Well, generally, we have copies made and we're able to hear it before, but if that didn't happen in this case, then we'll give you time to do it. So we'll hold off on a ruling on whether to admit it or not to give you a chance to listen to it. Let me ask you, have you heard what is been represented to be the recording that is on that disc, or
I believe I have, Your Honor.
okay, can we conditionally admit it subject to you verifying that what's on that disc is what you expect it to be?
That's fine, Your Honor.
Okay, so we're going to conditionally admit Exhibit 50, subject to Ms. Phillips making sure it's what she believes it to be. Were you planning on publishing it now?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, then we don't have an issue. Go ahead.
Officer Duarte, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit 169. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open that and see if you recognize it. Once it's open, I'm going to show it to the defense counsel and we'll ask you for the questions.
Their photographs.
Without showing them to us.
Sorry.
They haven't been admitted yet. You indicated their photographs.
Yes.
At the time that you were at the Smith's residence, did you obtain some photographs from Tammi Smith?
They were emailed to me.
Okay, and who emailed them to you?
Tammi.
And what were the photographs of that she emailed you?
Gabriel.
And the photographs that you have there in front of you that's exhibit 169, are those photographs that you printed off after she emailed them to you?
Yes.
And then did you impound them
Yes.
into evidence?
Yes.
You can go ahead and show them to defense counsel. Now, they're over. And I move to admit exhibit number 169.
No
Any
objection.
any objection? No objection. Exhibit 169 is admitted.
Your Honor, I move to publish these to the jury.
You may publish them.
Your Honor, I'm not going to ask any further questions. I'm just going to show them to the jury. Still spatially challenged. When you were at the Smith's residence, did you see a little girl there?
Yes,
Do you recognize that little girl in his photographs?
the one in the picture, yes.
Officer Duarte, I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 171. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and open that, see if you recognize it. And then I'm going to show it to the defense counsel. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
Is that an item provided to you by Tammi Smith
Yes.
on the night that you were there, December 27, 2009?
Yes.
And what specifically is it?
It's a temporary guardianship.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of exhibit number 171.
Any objection?
None, Your Honor.
Exhibit 171 is admitted.
Your Honor, I move to publish the exhibit.
You may publish it.
This is my first time with this equipment, so I'm learning. Officer Duarte, I don't know if you can see it very well, and if you can, I can bring it to you. But this is the guardianship document Tammi Smith provided to you herself.
I don't recall if she provided it or Jack provided, but one of those two provided it that night.
But you obtained it from them. Do you recall how it was they gave it to you? Did they print it off? Did they already have it printed up?
I don't remember.
Okay. If you could look at the document,
Flip it around.
and I'm going to flip it around. If you could look at the document, up at the first sentence there, you see the name Elizabeth Joanne Johnson.
Yes.
For the record, how is Joanne spelled?
Joann.
Thank you, Officer Duarte. I'm going to show you exhibit number 172, which is also unopened, so I'm going to ask you to open it and then I'll show it to defense counsel. I'm going to go ahead and stand here if it's okay with the judge until he opens it. Officer Duarte, do you recognize exhibit number 172?
Yes.
And is that an item that you obtained at the Smith residence on December 27, 2009?
Yes.
Is that an item you impounded?
Yes.
What exactly is that item?
It's a 2-page printout of it. Looks to be a MySpace page.
And did Tammi Smith provide that to you?
Yes.
And do you recognize whose MySpace page that is?
I don't recognize it, but I can't tell from the initial post on the top here.
Did Tammi Smith indicate to you it was a MySpace page to Elizabeth Johnson?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of Exhibit 172.
Any objection? No, Your Honor. Exhibit 172 is admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Officer Duarte, if you can see that, could you please tell us what it says?
Well, it's dated 12/22 of 2009, 11:18 a.m. It says to Elizabeth, please call us and let us know you and Gabriel are okay. We are all worried, as you can expect, and we have some very important information that you really, really need to hear before this weekend. And then there's a phone number, 623-687-5224/1887, period. It's very serious and looks like 4 exclamation marks, and it's signed Tammi/Jack.
And for the record, in case further record's needed, that says page 1 of 1. Officer Duarte, can you read what you can see there on the screen, starting at the beginning where it says, excited to start my new life?
Well, there's a photograph, and then it says excited to start my new life. You know, it looks like it was posted at 9:13 a.m. on December 24th, and there's a spot for mood and happy. And then where there's a will, there's a way, mood, amused. That was posted at 12 a.m. December 24th from mobile. And then the next line says, where there's a will, there's a way, posted at 12:37 p.m. December 23rd. The next line says, my Bubba's learning to crawl, exclamation mark. Mood accomplished, posted at 11:14 a.m. December 21st. The next line says mood blessed, and then posted at 6:27 p.m. August 3rd from mobile. The next line says mood bored, posted at 9:01 a.m. July 13th from mobile. And then add comment ... and a photograph, and posted at 12:18 p.m. July, looks like 21st, and it says new baby pics, exclamation point, and then 1 comment total. And the next line says mood happy, posted at 11:50 a.m. May 12th. The next line says mood nervous, posted at 1:24 p.m. April 21st.
One more.
And the next line says mood anxious, posted at 1:49 p.m. December 23rd, 2008.
Senior, should we at a good point for a break right now, about at that time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we're going to take our afternoon break for about 15 minutes, so we'll come back around 3:15. Until then, remember the admonition, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes.
All rise for the jury.
Okay, please be seated, everyone. We are outside the presence of the jury. Anybody need to talk about anything during our break? Okay. All right, we'll pick back up in about 15 minutes. You can step down while we're waiting. Just come back up in about 15 minutes.
Hold on a second, Your Honor.
Tell the court that Your Honor, I will attempt to listen to Exhibit 50 while break.
Okay, if there's no, I mean, eventually, obviously you need to. In the future, it'd be better if we take care of that before. If there are other exhibits that are sealed that you think you know what they are, but you feel like you need to verify, then let's take care of that so we can admit it or not when we get to that point.
I'm happy to do that, Judge.
Okay, all right. Okay, then I'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Let the record reflect the presence of the jury panel, the defendant, and counsel. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We left off with Officer Duarte's direct testimony, so Ms. Andrews, you may continue.
Your Honor, at this time I pass the witness for cross-examination.
All right, thank you. Ms. Phillips, cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Officer Duarte. Now, you went to the Smith's house on December the 27th, 2009, correct?
Yes.
And that was at approximately 4:11 p.m. And that's according to your report, correct?
I think that's when I was dispatched out there, yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And you went there to look for Gabriel Johnson
Yes.
and to do what's known as a welfare check,
Yes.
just to check and make sure he was okay. Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And
Hold on for 1 second. You've got a very soft voice, so
Okay.
project, make sure you're speaking out clearly so we can all hear you. Ms. Phillips.
Yes, Your Honor.
thank you. So you were told to go there to see if the baby was there,
Yes.
or to see if the Smiths might know where the baby was.
Yes.
Do you remember who sent you there?
Police dispatch sent us.
And so you, as you've indicated, made contact with the Smiths at their house.
Yes.
And they were cooperative at all times, right?
Yes.
And you knocked on the door and they voluntarily let you in.
Yes.
Right? You didn't have a search warrant.
No.
You didn't have an arrest warrant.
No.
Then you interviewed them.
Yes.
You recorded the interview.
Yes.
And it's fair to say that they probably did not know that they were being recorded.
Yes.
And Tammi told you that she had heard from Elizabeth.
Yes.
And you asked Tammi some questions.
Yes.
And she freely answered your questions.
Yes.
And you didn't feel as if she was hiding any information?
I don't know what she's like, if she ever hides information, so I don't know that I can answer that.
Okay, do you remember doing an interview at the county attorney's office on March 8th, 2012?
No, I did a phone interview.
Did we do a phone interview that day? Okay. That was the day I had the cold. Yes, you're right. We did do it telephonically. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember that I asked you, did you feel like her demeanor she was hiding any information? Do you remember me asking you that?
Yes.
And your answer was no. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do recall that, yes.
Okay, so you didn't feel like she was hiding anything from you.
No.
And at some point you established that the baby was not there.
Yes. That's
Okay, and that was after you and Officer Laux searched the whole home.
yes.
And Tammi and Jack consented for you to search their home.
Yes.
And they didn't prevent you from looking anywhere, did they?
No.
And so when Tammi was telling you that she had talked to Elizabeth, she showed you the MySpace page on her computer, right?
Yes.
And that was the MySpace copy of the page that we looked at before the break.
Yes.
And then she actually printed out that page for you.
Yes.
And that's the page that you took into evidence.
Yes.
And you sensed that she was concerned about wanting to help find the baby, didn't you?
Yes.
And then she showed you and Officer Laux her cell phone with her text messages.
Yes.
And she let Officer Laux take photographs of it.
Yes.
And then he took photos of her screen with the text messages on it.
Yes.
And then she also showed you the temporary guardianship document that she had for Gabriel.
Yes.
And you looked at it.
Yes.
Did you have any reason to think that it was not a legitimate document?
No.
And you took a copy of it.
Yes.
And we saw that copy before the break.
Yes.
And Tammy explained to you why they had that document.
Yes.
That they were trying to help Elizabeth out.
Yes.
Because Elizabeth and Gabriel's father had some issues.
Yes.
And then you also impounded the emails from Tammy's Gmail account, correct?
The emails that were forwarded to me, yes.
And they were forwarded to you by Detective Aguilera?
Yes.
Because Detective Aguilera had Tammy email them to him?
Yes.
Email or text them to him?
Text them to him, yes.
Okay. And then they were forwarded to you?
Yes.
From Detective Aguilera?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Redirect, Ms. Andrews?
I have none, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we let Officer Duarte step down, does the jury have any questions for him? Doesn't look like it. May this witness be excused, Ms. Andrews?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer, you may step down. Thank you. And the state may call its next witness.
The state calls Officer Alexander Pina.
Okay, you want to get Officer Pena? And Ms. Romano, you may proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Officer, would you please state your full name?
Officer Alexander Pina, P-I-N-A,
And officer, who are you employed by?
the City of Tempe,
How long have you been employed with the city of Tempe?
going on 3.5 years now.
What is your position there?
City of Tempe police officer,
Okay, and have you been, what duty are you assigned to?
patrol.
Patrol, and have you been a patrol officer the entire 3 years?
Yes.
All right. Officer, did you have occasion back in December of 2009 to become involved in the investigation of a missing baby in the city of Tempe?
Yes.
And was that a baby by the name of Gabriel Johnson?
Yes.
All right. How did you become involved in that investigation?
We got a call for service for 900, it's a welfare check at the location of 6405 South Priest.
Okay. And was that on December 27th, 2009?
Yes.
All right. And approximately what time did you arrive at that location?
Approximately at 13:05 hours.
And is that 1:05 p.m.?
Yes.
All right. When you went to that location, what happened?
Initially, nobody was there, and then within an hour, the roommate of who we perceived or who we found out was Elizabeth Johnson that lived at that trailer home arrived at that trailer park, number 153.
And was that a person by the name of Malcolm Phipps?
Correct.
And did you speak to him at that time?
I did.
Now, while you were at that residence, did he let you in?
He did.
And did he allow you to look through the home?
Yes, he gave me permission.
All right. And while you looked through the home, what did you observe about the home?
Nothing out of the ordinary. I didn't see any baby items. There was no baby. Everything seemed just like a normal trailer home, just like as an adult would live in there.
Okay. And did you receive information as to when the last time Elizabeth had been at that home?
Mr. Phelps had mentioned the last time he saw her was the 15th, 16th.
Calls for your side. Sustained. Don't relate what somebody told you, if you can. Why don't you rephrase the question?
Without telling me what he said to you, did you determine the last time she had been seen at that home?
About the 16th.
Okay. And did you document that in your report?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you search any areas outside of the home?
Yes.
And what areas did you search?
The shed.
Did you find anything in the shed?
In the shed, I was able to locate a playpen crib and baby blankets and other miscellaneous items.
Okay. Were they baby items or just other random items?
The items were just random.
Okay.
Nothing to do with the baby.
Okay. Now, once you finished looking at that location, did you do anything else that day in regards to looking for the baby?
We looked through some trash the trash bins that had been placed out all along the street. So we went, I don't recall how many we went down each side of the trailer home, but we turned over trash cans outside on the street to see, just to look in there and see if we find anything.
Okay, and did you find anything of note?
None.
Now, you keep saying we. Who was with you?
Myself, my boss, Sergeant Linson,
Okay. And was he with you during the entire time?
or she.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was she with you the entire time?
Yes.
Did you take any further action that day?
At that time, I was able to call Jack and Tammi Smith.
Okay, and where did you receive their contact information, if you
I don't recall how I got it, but somehow I was able to retrieve it. Either I got it somehow, and then I was able to talk to Jack Smith initially, and then he handed the phone off to Tammi Smith.
Now, officer, do you recall what time you spoke to them that day?
If we got there approximately 13:05 hours, 1:05 p.m., I believe it was about an hour later, about 1400 hours, 2 o'clock p.m.
Okay, and where did you make that call from?
From that location at Trailer Park number 153.
And was that from a phone within the home or a cell phone?
It was a cell phone.
Was it your department cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. And when you indicated that you initially spoke with somebody who identified himself as Jack Smith, correct?
Yes.
And then another individual who identified herself as Tammi Smith.
Yes.
Right. And did they give you any information as to the whereabouts of Gabriel Johnson?
Just that she initially had the baby at approximately, I think, on the 18th of December, and that's the last time that she saw or had the baby. And then at that time, she was in texting communication with Elizabeth Johnson. As we found out, Elizabeth Johnson was on her way to Houston, or a city there in Texas, and not able to actually speak, but able to text intermittently because of poor cell phone service.
Okay. I want to back up just a little bit. One of the first things you indicated was that Ms. Smith told you that the last time she had seen Gabriel was on December 18th. Okay. Did she tell you what time of the day she saw him last?
Approximately 7 in the morning.
Okay, 7 a.m. And did she indicate what the circumstances were when she last saw him? Did she give you a location?
At a church over on Scottsdale on McDonald and the 101.
Okay, and she indicated at that time that she had dropped the baby off to Elizabeth Johnson.
Yes.
Right. And then she further told you that she had been in communication with Elizabeth?
Only through text messaging.
Only through text messaging. Okay, specifically, did she state that they had been in communications with her during her trip to Texas, but as of that day, they had not been able to speak to her on the phone?
Correct.
Only text her intermittently that particular day?
Yes.
On 12/27?
Yes.
Okay, I have no further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Cross-examination, Mr. Lee?
Yes, Judge. Judge, if you don't mind, I really hate this Elmo. Anything new I'm scared of.
He will not bite you, I don't think.
Let's hope not.
All right.
Officer, you work for Tempe?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing that?
3.5 years.
3.5 years. Did you have any law enforcement before that?
No.
Okay, so this is your first law enforcement experience?
Correct.
What did you do before that?
Military.
Military. How long did you do that?
22 years.
What did you do in the military?
Aircraft maintenance.
It sounds fun. Okay, so got out of the military, you're retired, you decide you want to go into law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
And you're kind of at the beginning of your career in law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're out on patrol. Is that where you start normally?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, so you're out on patrol, you get a call. Do you remember what exactly the call said when it came through?
No, I don't recall.
But it was a welfare check call,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Mm-hmm.
And it gave you an address to go to. Refresh my memory. What was that address?
4605 South Priest
Okay, what city is that in?
in Tempe.
So it's in Tempe. Are you normally in that area? Is that someplace you normally go?
Yes.
So are you familiar with this particular little trailer park?
Yes.
Okay, how many trailers do you suppose are in there?
It's about 350. Straight.
Big place?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you find the unit? Do you knew where it was, or it was pretty easy to find?
There's a map legend as soon as you come into the entrance of that place.
So let me get this straight. So you get the call, you go in there, you've got, what was it, 1 in the afternoon?
Correct.
Okay, 1 in the afternoon, you look at the legend, and you find, was it number 153?
Yes.
Okay, you find number 153, and you drive to that unit. Okay, and was there 2 of you?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 officers, both uniformed?
Yes.
Okay, so you got 2 uniformed officers. You go up, let's describe, because none of us were there, and none of us actually got to see this. Let's describe what happened so we have a good understanding. You got out of your patrol car and you walked up to the door?
Yes.
Did you knock? What did you do?
I did. Knocked on the door.
Do you announce who you were, or
Yes.
say it's Tempe Police?
Well, nobody was home at the time, but we knocked on the door.
Okay. It sounds like you stayed there for a while and you didn't leave. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was that out of concern on the welfare call?
We were trying to figure out because the unit I was talking to the dad.
Okay.
Was over at the headquarters. So we're trying to correspond with him. Hey, did we know where she went? Did we know what happened? Talking back and forth to see. So that's why we just stayed there to figure out what to do next.
Okay. You thought you might need to go to another location?
Possibly.
Okay. So you did stay there, and eventually someone came. Who was that person?
That was Mr. Malcolm Phelps.
Mr. Malcolm
roommate.
Phelps.
Mhm.
Okay. You know what? I've never seen Malcolm Phelps. What does he look like?
Tall, white, brown hair, brown eyes.
How old do you think he was?
I'd say right around 40s.
So in his 40s, tall, brown hair, brown eyes. Was he balding? Did he have a full head of hair? Do you remember?
I don't recall.
Was it long? Was it short?
No, it was short. It was short.
It was short. Okay. How was he dressed?
Casual.
Casual. What was your general impression of the guy? Was he a guy that's down on his luck? Was he a businessman? What was your impression of him?
Just a normal, average guy that just dressed in casual. Just came back from the grocery store.
Okay. He had his groceries with him?
Yes.
Okay. So just came back from the grocery store, had his groceries with him. Was he cooperative with you?
Sure.
So you asked the questions that you really wanted the answers to, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. And those questions were basically, where's Gabriel? Is that correct? You're asking, where's the baby and where's Elizabeth? Were those the questions that you asked him?
Basically, what I put in my report.
Okay. So did he invite you in the house at some point?
He did.
What did he do? Was he making lunch or something?
He was cooking. I don't know if it was brunch or lunch, dinner, in between. I'm not sure. But he was cooking.
Okay. Now, during the course of your investigation, did you come to find out that he was a roommate there?
Yes.
Okay. And during that same investigation, did you come to find out that he'd earlier looked at the apartment to find out if he wanted it?
Yes.
Okay. And did you also find out during the course of your investigation that it was this particular apartment, or this particular trailer was listed on Craigslist as a possible need of a roommate?
Correct.
Okay, so you found that out during the course of your investigation. Did you also find out that there was a room that at one point had baby items in it? The toys, cribs,
Correct.
things
Yeah.
like that.
That's
Okay, and did you find out during the course of your investigation that Mr. Phelps was now staying in that room?
yes.
And that there were no baby items currently in that room?
Correct.
Okay. Did he give you permission to look around?
Yes.
Again, we all of us weren't here. We didn't see it. We kind of need a visual picture of it. What did the inside of this apartment look like? Or this trailer? I don't know why I keep saying apartment. This trailer look like?
Couch. No, it wasn't fully furnished. Couch,
Okay.
TV. The kitchen was like right there, so it's all one big open area. I looked in his room. I think I saw just a bed. Like I said, he just moved there 2 weeks ago.
So just a bed. It was partially furnished. Did you look in Elizabeth's room?
Did.
Okay. What did that look
She
like?
had like a full queen size bed.
Okay.
Clothes in the closet, dresser, pictures.
Now, what was it? Dirty? Was it clean? What was the state of the apartment?
It wasn't messy, but it wasn't all tidied up. Like I don't know how you to keep our rooms clean. It wasn't, but it wasn't like the trash, clothes thrown all over the place or anything.
It wasn't like an episode of Hoarders, but it wasn't exactly tidy either. Okay. So, did you ever look around other places? Did you look for the baby?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where else did you look? What else was on that property? Was there a shed on that property?
There was.
There was a shed on that property. Did you find any baby items?
I did.
In that shed. Okay, now, I looked at your report. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you put in there that there was a trash can in there?
No, not in there, outside on the front.
Outside in the front. And there were items in the trash can.
Trash.
Okay. Do you have a copy of your report?
I do.
Okay. Can I get you to look at page 2 of your report? Well, let's see, 1, 2, the first full set of where your narrative. So the first page of your narrative, where you've got what you've written. We'll talk about paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, paragraph 5. Let's see, hold on. No, excuse me. Paragraph, the last full paragraph on the page where it says, Phipps granted me permission to search. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you look at the last sentence? Does that refresh your memory at all?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Was there a wastebasket?
Yes.
Okay. What was the wastebasket full of?
Baby blankets.
Baby blankets. Did it also say baby items on there? Miscellaneous items?
Miscellaneous items.
Okay. So you've got the stuff that presumably was once in the baby's room. Would you presume that was Gabriel's room? Is that your assumption?
Possibly.
Okay, so I don't know it was possibly Gabriel's room. All of that was, or at least some of it was taken out, put into a shed, and some of it put into a wastebasket. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you talked about on direct that at some point you were able to get a phone number, and that was to Jack and Tammi Smith, correct? Okay. You called that phone number. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you say you talked to Jack first?
Initially, yes.
Okay. You initially talked to Jack when you answered the phone, and then you talked to who?
Tammi.
Tammi. Now, what was the purpose? Why would you do that? Why did you call that number?
We had got information, I don't know how I got it, but that negotiations about adoption or something like that.
Okay,
So we
been
wanted to check that lead and see if maybe did that really happen.
And you did that because that makes sense. You want to find the baby, and you called the number that you thought you could get some help from.
Yes.
Okay. And you called and talked to Jack and then to Tammi. Did you ask Tammi questions?
I believe I did.
Okay, so you called her. You've been trained to ask questions, correct?
Yes.
You've been trained in the academy.
Yes.
And you've been trained out in the field to ask questions because you need to get answers, correct?
Yes.
So you used that training when you talked to Tammi and you asked her questions, correct?
Yes.
Now, you talk about in your report what she answered, and you talked a little bit about it on direct. She told you about Elizabeth, right?
Yes.
And that's because you asked her about it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And she gave you an answer that Elizabeth, she'd been in contact with Elizabeth. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. And she told you that she was having problems that day contacting Elizabeth, correct?
Yes.
And that was from problems with intermittent cell phone communication, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, you wrote your report and you included all the proper details in there, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You put all the important details in there. It's because you've been trained to do that.
Yes.
Okay. And you know that people like me, defense attorneys, rely on police reports, right?
Yes.
And you know that prosecutors rely on police reports, correct?
Yes.
Detective Ramirez rely on police reports that written by other officers.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And juries rely on police reports, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you take that in mind. You wrote that report the way that you always write your reports, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you included all the important details.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In that report, you mentioned all the details that Tammi gave you, correct?
Yes, sir.
In that report, there's no mention that she said, I don't want to talk to you. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's because she did want to talk to you.
I believe so, yeah. We didn't, she didn't say she did not want to talk to me.
And there's no mention in that report that she wasn't helpful. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's because she was helpful. Okay.
Correct.
There's no mention in that report that she was belligerent, correct?
Correct.
was because she was not belligerent. Is that correct?
Correct.
There's no mention in that report that she was hiding stuff. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's because you had no reason to believe that she had anything to hide.
That's correct.
Okay. You took down all the information. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You gave it to the people who are in charge of the investigation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because you knew that that could help them find what Tammi told them. You knew that that could help them find baby Gabriel. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect.
No follow-up, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we let Officer Pina step down, does the jury have any questions for him? Going once, going twice. May this witness be excused?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused, Mr. Lee?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may step down. Thank you, officer. Would counsel please approach? Ladies and gentlemen, we're making very good time, and one of the results of making really good time is that we finished the witnesses that we had brought here today, so we're going to get to leave a little bit early today. So that means we're finished for the week. Now, you're going to go home and you may see some people over the weekend that you haven't seen since the trial started, or maybe even since you've been picked as jurors, and they're going to say, so what have you been doing? And you could tell them you're on a jury and the trial is going to last through potentially May 17th, and then they're going to say, what kind of case is it? And they may even say, have you heard about that baby Gabriel case over in the courtroom? And you're going to have to make sure that you don't talk about the case, that you don't do any research, that you don't have any exposure to any news. And that's going to be harder over the weekend because usually we have a little bit of downtime. So you've got an especially strong challenge over the next few days. We are taking Monday off. So remember, it's on that calendar. We don't come back till Tuesday. There's no trial on Monday. So next week our trial days are going to be like they were this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then we get into the regular pattern of Monday through Thursday after that. So remember the admonition. Have a good weekend. We'll see you back not on Monday, but on Tuesday. Please be back at 10:25 and have a good weekend.
All right.